physical layer is mainly related to line configuration. In the sense, I can able to have wired or wireless media. Communication channel is nothing but the way or media used to send the data as well as receive the data. Transmission media, it is categorized into two types. One is guided and another one is unguided. Hello friends, a warm welcome to my new chapter, and the chapter name here is the physical layer. I'm your Revati ma'am, faculty from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So dear student, in my last class I started with the TCP bar IP reference model. Suppose if I want to communicate with other device or other node, I must have TCP bar IP. Then what is TCP? That is nothing but transmission control protocol and IP protocol, that is internet protocol. It supports 4 different layers and each layer is responsible for performing specific task. But in my today's session, I am going to deal with the physical layer. So dear student, if I consider OSI reference model or TCP bar IP reference model, we have discussed physical layer. Here we are going to study why we want physical layer, what is the need of physical layer. So dear student, the main job of the physical layer is to establish physical connection between two devices. As the name itself indicates that physical layer is mainly related to line configuration. In the sense, I can able to have wired or wireless media. And if I consider physical layer, it supports two type of transmission. One is wired and wireless. And in my today's session, I'm going to start with transmission media. So what is transmission media? Dear student, think that I want to send a letter to my friend. What is the media I'm going to have? Either postal. But nowadays, I can use email. In early days, it is postal. But nowadays, I'm going to use email to send the letter or send the mail. Now, if I consider transmission media is a communication channel, it's a communication way, either wired or wireless. If I consider early day to send the letter, we are going to use transportation, or we are going to use bus, or we are going to use train. So dear student, here communication channel is nothing but the way or media used to send the data as well as receive the data. In early days, to send the letter or to receive the letter, I'm going to have postal. But in computer network, suppose if I want to communicate with two different nodes, I must have the communication channel, and it is responsible for transmitting the information, that's nothing but the resource or data from source to destination, from source or transmitter to receiver. It is a physical path for data transmission. Suppose, think that I have A and I have B. So A is nothing but the sender and B is nothing but the receiver. Now A want to send some data to B, at the same time B want to send some data to A. Now both the devices or both the nodes want to communicate each other. To communicate, we must require communication channel, that is known as transmission media. And if I consider transmission media, It is categorized into two types. One is guided and another one is unguided. So guided is nothing but the bounded media, and unguided is nothing but the unbounded media. So this bounded media is also called wired media, and unbounded media is also called wireless. And if I consider guided media, it's also further categorized into 5 different types. But according to our syllabus, we are going to study only 3 types, that is coaxial cable, fiber optics and twisted pair cable. And if I consider unguided media, we are going to study radio waves, microwaves and infrared waves. So what is communication media? It's nothing but the communication channel, and it is categorized into 2 types, guided and unguided. If I consider guided, how many types? 3 types. Which are the 3? Twisted pair, coaxial cable and fiber optics. And if I consider unguided media, which are the 3 types we are going to study? That is radio wave, microwave and infrared. Now dear student, let me to discuss the type of communication media one by one. So dear student, at the beginning I am going to have guided. So guided transmission media is nothing but the bounded media or wired. So wired in the sense what? There is a physical connection between 2 devices. To connect 2 devices, I am going to use wire. For that reason, it is called guided media. So guided media is also known as wired or bounded media. So what's the meaning of bound? In the sense, by using wired media, we can able to cover certain boundaries or within particular range or distance. These media consists of wires through which the data is transferred. So dear student, in guided media, I am going to have the wires. By using wires, I am going to transfer the data. Now, guided media is a physical link between transmitter and recipient or receiver. So dear student, see, A is nothing but the sender or transmitter, B is nothing but the receiver or recipient. Now, if A and B want to communicate each other, then there must be a physical line. So here physical line is nothing but the wired connection between A and B. Signals are directed in a narrow pathway. So here signals are transmitted narrowly. And these media types are used for shorter distance. By using guided media, I can able to cover very short distance. Since physical limitation limits the signal that flow through these transmission media. In the sense, so dear student, as the length of the wire is going to increase, the quality of the data is going to decrease. So for that, we are going to use guided transmission media only for the shorter distance or limited distance. Now I am going to have unguided media. As the name itself indicates that to communicate two systems, I does not require any physical path. In the sense what? I am going to use free space. That's nothing but the air. So it is also called by the name unbounded. So I don't have any restriction. In the sense what? I am using air. So I can have or I can able to have the air throughout the world. So there is no restriction here. Also known as bounded. So it is also known as unbounded. If it is guided, bounded. If it is unguided, unbounded or wireless media. And it is responsible for transferring the data in the form of electromagnetic signals. So, what is the form of signals we have? That is electromagnetic signals. Now, using air, we can able to transfer electromagnetic signals very easily and very effectively. For that reason, we are going to use air as the medium. There is no physical connection between two devices. That's nothing but the receiver and transmitter. This type of transmission media is applicable for longer distance. The best example I can able to consider mobile communication. Suppose if I want to call my friend who is staying in some other country, then using unguided transmission media, I can able to call him. Now, if I consider the type of guided media, the guided medias are mainly categorized into three types: twisted pair cable, optical fiber cable and coaxial cable. Now let me to discuss twisted pair cable. So dear student, as the name itself indicates that this cable is made up of copper wires and each wires are twisted each other. Now let me to draw the wire here. See, I have two wires and each wires are twisted each other. Okay, so this central wire is made up of copper and this outer insulator is made up of plastic. I repeat, as the name itself indicates that both the wires are twisted each other. And if I consider this example, see, I have total 8 different wires and each wires are twisted each other. And the inner conductor, so this is the copper conductor, is responsible for carrying the data. And this is the outer jacket made up of plastic. So it acts as a insulator. Now, what is the need of having two wires here? One is used to carry the data. And what is the use of another wire? It is mainly used for grounding purpose. So this is the example for guided media. So in this type of transmission media, two insulated conductors of a single circuits are twisted together to improve electromagnetic capability. So dear student, here I have two wires. I am going to have two wires and I am going to twist each other in order to improve the electromagnetic capacity. And one wire is responsible for carrying the data. And what about other? It is responsible for grounding purpose. These are the most widely and most commonly used transmission media, and this guided media, that is this twisted pair cable, is further categorized into two types, that is shield twisted pair and unshield twisted pair. Now dear student, I am going to have the unshield twisted pair cable. So what is unshield twisted pair cable? So dear student, let me to draw the twisted pair cable first. So dear student, this is the example for unshield twisted pair cable. As I discussed, in twisted pair cable, I am going to have two cables and the inner wire. So this is the copper wire It is made up of copper, and we are going to have the insulator, and that is made by using plastic. Now, one wire is responsible for carrying the data and another wire is responsible for ground. And what kind of signals I am going to carry? That is electromagnetic signals. And I am going to have outer jacket, and this is made up of insulator, that is plastic insulator once again. So, this consists of two insulated copper wires. See, I have the insulator. Along with that, I am going to have the copper wire, and that are coiled around one another. So, they are twisted each other. I have two copper wires, and that is covered by using plastic insulator. These type of transmission media block interference without depending on any physical shield. The unshield twisted pairs are very affordable and it is very easy to set up, and it provides high speed data transmission. For that reason, most of the time we are going to use that is unshield twisted pair cable, and especially we are going to use to establish or make LAN connection. So dear student, here I have some type of UTP, that is unshield twisted pair cables. In that, first one I am going to have Cat3, that's nothing but the class 3, but nowadays rarely we are going to use because of it is low data transfer rate. Cat3 is mainly deployed in phone lines, where we can able to find Cat3 in our telephone line. And what is the data rate? It supports 10 megabits per second up to 100 meters. Then I am going to have class 4. It is used in token ring network. So dear student, if I want to make token ring network, then I am going to use UTP in that category 4. And what is the data rate? That is 16 megabits per second up to 100 meters. And I am going to have Cat5. So, it is used in Ethernet based LAN. Whenever I want to make LAN connection, and I am going to use Cat5. That is nothing but the category 5 or class 5. So here Cat5 contains two twisted pairs and it supports 100 megabits per second up to 100 meters. Now, to make a connection, I required RJ5. So, it's a connector. Now, see here, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of having unshield twisted pair cable? So, dear student, if I consider advantages, it is least expensive. In the sense what? To buy unshield twisted pair cable, I required minimum amount. Easy to install and it supports high data transfer rate. Let me to discuss the disadvantage here. So, if I consider unshield twisted pair, due to electromagnetic interference, we are going to get some noisy data. So, it is susceptible to external interference, and if I compare this one with shield twisted pair cable, then it is very low quality or it is having very low capacity of data transfer. Now, let me to discuss shield twisted pair cable. So as the name itself indicates that we are going to have copper shield. It is responsible for protecting electromagnetic signals. So dear student, this twisted cable consisted of a foil shield to block external interference. So dear student, if this is my twisted pair cable, now I'm going to have the copper shield. Above that, I'm going to have the protector. So it is above that I'm going to have the jacket, that is plastic jacket. This is my copper shield. So it's nothing but a foil shield. Okay, and I'm going to have the plastic, that is insulator, and this is my copper wire responsible for carrying the data. Another one is used to grounding purpose. The insulation within these type of twisted cable are allow greater data transfer by using shield twisted pair cable. I can able to transfer large amount of data. These are used for fast data transfer rate, Ethernet, and in the voice channel of telephone lines. In the sense what? We are going to use this shield twisted pair cable to transfer the data as well as in the telephone lines. Now, if I consider the advantage, it provides better performance than UTP. It eliminates crosstalks as well as comparatively it is very faster. And what is the disadvantage? It's very difficult to install and manufacture. It is costly and it is bulky. So these are the disadvantages. Now let me to discuss the difference between UTP and STP. So let me to first write first difference UTP, that is unshield twisted pair, and here it is shield twisted pair. And if I consider unshield twisted pair, grounding is not necessary. If I consider shield twisted pair, grounding is very essential and it is must and should. And if I consider data rate, it is comparatively slow than STP. If I consider STP, the data transfer rate is higher than UTP. And the cost of UTP is very less, in the sense what? To buy unshield twisted pair cable, we required minimum cost. What about STP? It is costlier. And if I consider UTP, no need of maintenance. But if I consider shield twisted pair cable, then I want to maintain the cable. And if I consider UTP, it provides high noise because we don't have any external foil coil. But if I consider STP, the noise is very less because we are going to have the outer shield or outer conductor. Because of that, we are going to have less noise. Now, let me to discuss second type of cable, coaxial cable. So, what is coaxial cable and where we can able to find? So, dear student, most of your house you have TV, and whatever the cable we are going to use to connect, that is coaxial cable. That's nothing but from your dish or from your antenna to TV. What cable we are going to use? That is coaxial cable. So coaxial cable has a central insulated conductor. So coaxial cable is going to have the central insulated conductor, which may be a solid wire. Okay, so we are going to have one copper wire and that is covered by protective jackets. It is then enclosed in a conducting layer which is usually a copper or aluminium mesh and sometimes it is solid metal sleeve. It is then covered by a outer insulator called by the name jacket. Anyway, let me to consider this example or this diagram. This is the diagram for coaxial cable. And see, this is my protective jacket, outer jacket. It is made up of plastic. Then I'm going to have the mesh. Okay, this is outer mesh. Then I'm going to have the insulator and inside that I'm going to have the copper wire or copper conductor, and this copper wire is protected by the insulator and this insulator is covered by the mesh and this mesh is covered by the protective jacket. Now let me to explain the functionalities of all this. That is copper conductor. It is a central conductor responsible for carrying the signal or data, which is made up of copper. The conductor is the point at which data transmits. Then I'm going to have insulator. So I'm going to have the central wire, that's nothing but the copper that is protected or covered by the insulator. Now it is a dielectric plastic insulator around the copper conductor and it is used to maintain the spacing between the central conductor and the shield. Now I'm going to have the jacket. So the jacket is also made by the copper. It is mainly used to carry electromagnetic interference. The bride provides a barrier against EMI moving into out of the coaxial cable. So dear student, if I consider copper conductor that is protected by the insulator, outside the insulator we are going to have the mesh. Okay, that is made up of copper once again in order to protect from the electromagnetic interference. And at the end, I'm going to have the protective jacket that is made up of plastic layer. It is an external polymer layer which has a plastic coating. It is used to protect internal layer from the damage. So if I consider coaxial cable, I have copper, that is the main wire, and that is covered by the insulator and that is covered by the mesh. Now I want to protect all these three. For that I am going to have the outer jacket that is made by the plastic. Then what is the advantage? Coaxial cable supports high bandwidth and it's also very easy to install and it's going to have the better cut through resistance. So we are going to get good voice quality, high immunity, less affected by noise or crosstalk or electromagnetic interference. And coaxial cable supports multiple channels. So one of the best advantage, it supports multiple channels. Then what is the disadvantage? So it is more expensive than twisted pair cable and coaxial cable must be grounded in order to avoid voice in the data transmission. As a coaxial cable has multiple layers, it is very bulky. There is a chance of breaking the coaxial cable and attaching a T-joint. So dear student, if I consider coaxial cable and hackers are going to break that coaxial cable and they are going to attach T-joint, so that comparing to security of the data, it provides very less security for the data. Why? Because hacker can able to break the coaxial cable very easily and they can able to attach T-joint, so that intruder or hacker or advisory, they can able to access the data. The last one is fiber optics. So here a fiber optic cable is a network cable which is mainly used to send the data in the form of light signals. So contains standards of glass fiber inside an insulating casing. So dear student, we are going to have glass fibers inside and this glass fiber is responsible for carrying the data in the form of light. They are designed for long distance. When I want to send data for the longer distance, then I'm going to use fiber optics, and whatever the data I'm going to send, that is in the form of light signals, and it provides high data performance, and nowadays we are going to use for telecommunication. Compared to wired cable, fiber optic provides higher, large bandwidth and transmits data for longer distance. Fiber optic cable supports much of the world's internet, cable TV and telephone system. In the sense what? Nowadays, we are going to use fiber optics in the field of internet, telecommunication or telephone system. Now, the main element of fiber optics. So, if I consider fiber optics, I'm going to have the core. Now, this is the central tube of very thin size. See, this is the core and it is made up of optically transparent dielectric medium and carry the light transmitted to receiver. So this is the core which is made up of optically transparent dielectronic and it is responsible for carrying the data to the recipient or receiver. The core diameter may vary from 5 um to 100 um. Unit, right? So 5 um to 100 um. Now the another core component here is cladding. See here, I have, this is my glass core and I'm going to have the glass cladding. I'm going to have the glass cladding. And this glass cladding, it is outer optical metal surrounding the core. So, cladding is nothing but the outer optical material which is surrounded by the central core. Having reflecting index, it must have the reflex index lower than core, and cladding helps to keep the light. So using cladding, we can able to keep the light within that bandwidth or within that range within the core through the phenomena of total internal reflection. So dear student, whatever the data I am going to send, that's in the form of light. So when light reflects, so in return, we are not going to get same data or same signal. Now, to manage light reflection, I'm going to have the cladding. Buffer coating. It is a plastic coating. So buffer coating is what? It's a plastic coating outside the cladding, protects the fiber made of silicone rubber. So here buffer coating is responsible for protecting the fiber optics which is made by the silicone rubber. And what is the diameter? It is going to support, that is 250 to 300 So dear student, in my today's class, I started with what is guided media and what is unguided media. Under guided media, I started with fiber optics, that is fiber optical cable, twisted pair cable and coaxial cable. Along with that, I have discussed some of the advantages and disadvantages. And if I consider fiber optics, what is the advantage? It is possible to transfer the data at high rate, high speed, long distance. Then what is the disadvantage? It is very costly. Maintenance as well as installation is difficult. So these are the disadvantage of fiber optics. But in my next class, I'm going to start with unguided media. Under unguided media, I'm going to discuss what is radio wave, microwave and infrared. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next session with the new topic, that is unguided media. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.